Droga pani marszałek Kidawa-Błońska, pani Małgorzato, drodzy senatorowie, to prawdziwa przemoc być znów i pięknie Polsce,
to be back in the beautiful Poland and especially in the Polish Senate.
Chcę rozpocząć tymi słowami.
I wish to begin my speech with the following words.
Dla mnie,
for the European Parliament, for me, for the politicians of my generation, Poland is the beating heart of European values.
Miejsce Polski jest centrum
Poland's place is at the center of Europe.
I switch to English now. Poland is a nation where a woman from Warsaw can win 2 Nobel Prizes, where an electrician from Gdansk can help tear down an iron curtain, and where a priest from Krakow can inspire the world and become a saint. My generation looked to Poland, to the Solidarność movement, as the embodiment of moral leadership in the struggle against totalitarianism, of courage in the face of decades of oppression, the nation of freedom fighters who showed all of us how not to be afraid. Even as a child, I could feel the hope, the passion, the intensity with which you believed through your iconic red and white logo that I so often saw on newspapers and TV screens. It is why I'm so proud to have a version of it hanging up in my office in Brussels as a daily reminder of why we do what we do and why I will be going to Gdansk tomorrow to pay tribute to these Polish and European heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, what followed from Gdansk was a path that led Poland and much of Central and Eastern Europe out of the grip of totalitarianism towards a free, prosperous European future. In 1989, yours was the first country to organize post-communist free elections. 10 years later, in 1999, yours was among the first former Soviet states to take their seats at the NATO table. And 5 years after that, in May of 2004, the people of Poland had spoken up yet again for the values that bind us together as Europeans, and your country became the largest country of 10 to join the European Union. I want people to recapture that sense of hope in Europe that we all felt in 2004. I see my country's ambassador to Poland here, and she knows what I mean. In these past 20 years, Poland can be proud of the important role it has played in seeing Europe go from strength to strength. That has seen us standing up for Ukraine and for our values, making our people more prosperous, more safer, more secure, and Europeans' everyday lives that little bit easier. We have looked to Poland, to the Polish Senate, with the important role that it plays for Polish democracy, for inspiration, for advice, for direction, and I'm confident that this will continue. In this chapter in Poland's history, we need to reaffirm our shared values. And here, let me be clear. When we talk about shared values, this has never meant making everybody the same. We cherish our differences, our unique traditions, our cultures, and our diversity, because we know that that is where our true strength lies. But rather, my point is that the responsibility to protect the Europe of values and opportunities that we have built, that previous generations could only have dreamt of, now rests on our generation's shoulders. And here I want to thank you, Senators, for the courage that you have shown throughout the years in standing up for our values, for democracy, for freedom, for the rule of law, even when it was difficult. Let me say that everyone can see the impressive changes that have been made recently in Poland, as I told Prime Minister Tusk this morning. Where some thought there would be small steps made, you made giant leaps forward, back to the very center of Europe where Poland belongs. And know that the European Parliament has been and will always be by your side. Now, looking back, ladies and gentlemen, the last years have not been easy. But as the saying goes, the strongest steel is forged in the hottest of fires. And that is why I argue that Europe is stronger than it has ever been. That the crises we faced made us more resilient, more determined, and more united than ever before. The success of our European currency and our single market is a reflection of our collective willingness to work together, to look at the bigger picture for the prosperity of our people. At the height of the pandemic, we managed to ensure the joint provision of vaccines and ventilators, made huge steps forward in our joint capacity for healthcare. We supported jobs and businesses and came together like never before to agree on 723 billion euros in recovery and resilience facility, which has helped national economies recover. In response to attacks on Ukraine and on democracy, European Union institutions and member states have rallied with unprecedented unity. And here I want to thank you, your nation, your people, for that particularly important role that Poland has played. Firstly, for the warnings you had been giving us about Russia for years. When we saw the hybrid attacks on our democratic processes, what happened in Georgia, in Crimea, and how they tried to crush democracy in Belarus, Poland knew only too well what was at stake, and we should have listened. Secondly, and in spite of what I just said, for the sense of responsibility you have shown Europe and the world, particularly when it came to the outstanding display in solidarity, in opening up your homes and hearts to millions of Ukrainian people forced to seek refuge. And this time, I want to assure you that we have listened and that we will not make the same mistake again. I will never forget, in the very early hours of the morning of the 1st of April 2024, at Przemysl station, where I was crossing into Ukraine, and I could see already at the very beginning of the war, hundreds and hundreds of people on the other side of the platform entering Poland to seek refuge. That's the very first time I saw that display of solidarity that we could really just take a little bit of spirit from and do so much better as Europe. So we will continue to condemn Russia's aggression. We will continue to impose crippling sanctions on its war machine. We will continue to call for Russian assets to be used to rebuild Ukraine. We will continue to hold culprits of war crimes to account. We will continue assisting Ukraine in becoming full members of the European Union. We will continue to provide political, economic, military, financial, humanitarian and diplomatic assistance to Ukraine. And we must and can do this in a way that does not undermine critical sectors in our internal market. On energy, I am proud to say that we have decreased our dependencies on Russian national gas by over 75%. And by pooling our storage capacities and steaming up the rollout of renewable energy, we have successfully minimalized the energy crisis. Now, with a view to the longer term, funding has been allocated to strengthen our European energy infrastructures so that member states can more easily rely on one another in times of crisis. And here, let me emphasize once again Poland's crucial role in our energy security infrastructure, not least when it came to supporting Slovakia and our Baltic partners. On security and defence, we have been pushing ahead to build a real defence union, one that complements NATO without competing with it. We have made first steps by boosting our defence capabilities and enhancing our rapid reaction capacity to help the EU respond to unexpected crises. But if we want to remain ahead of the curve in ensuring citizens' protection, more remains to be done. In the digital era, we have brought in the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act and the world's first Artificial Intelligence Act, which will provide predictability, certainty, and trust for digital players. In an age of disinformation, we are in the final stages of adopting groundbreaking legislation on media freedom, on anti-SLAPP, which is used to silence journalists who are investigating what should be investigating, who are asking questions that should be asked, which ensure that media independence that we so fought for to join the European Union, promote pluralism and protect from abusive litigation. On agriculture, we need to find a balance between ensuring our farmers are able to feed our continent and secure their livelihoods while saving our planet. We can manage that. We can only address climate challenges with our farmers, looking at the socio-economic impact of decisions and leaving no one behind. On equality, we have added, I would say, another 100 cracks in that thick glass ceiling with the Women on Boards Directive. And we will keep pushing for equal pay provisions for equal work until the end of term. All of this, of course, while giving unlimited possibilities for Europeans to travel, to study, to work, to create businesses in a great space of freedom. And thanks to EU funds for programmes such as Next Generation EU, Erasmus, Horizon Europe, Invest EU, social, regional and rural development funds, we are giving young people the opportunity to build their talents and build a future. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our strategy to boost our economic growth, to beef up our union's competitiveness and strengthen its autonomy and freedom. And let me say that this has been no easy feat. And while we are proud of our successes, as I've just listed them, we must also be honest about where we could have done better. As someone once put it to me, there is an invisible line that people cannot be pushed beyond. People must have confidence in the process, and they must be able to afford it. Otherwise, it will not succeed. That is why we need to have the understanding and the courage to admit where we are going or have gone too far, too fast, like what the European Parliament did with the Pesticides Reduction Act. Our farmers, businesses and regions have every reason to expect the promise of Europe to deliver for them too. And we must be able to deliver that. And yet, what we managed to achieve so far, and under unprecedented pressure, is still something which we ought to be proud of, and maybe even give ourselves a little bit of credit for. It worries me that in many places there is a new generation who, despite having all the information of the world at their fingertips, are more skeptical than before, who are tempted by populists that attempt to paint black and white pictures when the reality is always 1,000 shades of grey, or who are more cynical of politics in general. I know I am the mother of 4 boys, I see it every day at home. Because they take the rights that Europe protects and the opportunities that our union gives for granted. They don't remember our countries before entering the European Union, the battles that were fought for what is now taken completely for granted. And we cannot allow that generation to retreat to the comfort, to the fringes of the political extremes. This, I believe, is the greatest challenge that we are facing in the next months before the European Parliament elections on the 9th of June. In the last European elections, 46% of Polish voters went to the ballot box. It is an impressive increase of almost 100% of how many went in 2014. But the reality is that less than half of all Polish people felt the responsibility to vote. And I think, and I hope you can join me in saying this, we can do better. Because this is why I came here today, and I will be spending these days in Poland as I speak also to that generation, in order to repitch that dream. And as President of the European Parliament, together with Polish members of the European Parliament, many of whom I see here, we have made it our mission to burst through the Brussels bubble and bring Europe closer to the citizens that it represents. We are here to listen to the Polish people, young people in particular, whom I will meet later on today at the University of Warsaw and tomorrow also in Gdansk, to invite them to join us in steering our future together. We will be explaining, we will be discussing, we will be listening, and then some more listening, because that's needed. Because the largest multinational exercise in democracy in the world will be taking place in less than 4 months. And we will be looking to Poland to answer Europe's call. Thank you very much.